Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ed Jeredjian. I'm the founding director of the Baker Institute. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this afternoon. Energy will be among the top policy priorities of the new administration. President-elect Barack Obama has emphasized his commitment to creating green-collar jobs, reducing U.S. dependence on foreign oil, and passing into law a national renewable energy standard. In these times of great economic uncertainty, it's not going to be easy. Support from the business community will be crucial. The new administration will need the wise counsel of corporate leaders who won't hesitate to express their informed opinion. Tonight's speaker assuredly fits the bill. Nobody can accuse T. Boone Pickens of pulling his punches, nor comment to him, "I'm not sure where you stand on the issue." The Pickens Plan addresses America's deepening concerns over the growing U.S. dependence on foreign oil. I know there's much interest by the size of the audience today in hearing Mr. Pickens describe his plan. He has also graciously accepted to go into a discussion with the audience in a question and answer period, which I think will be quite interesting. You have his biography in your program notes. I will touch on some aspects of his impressive bio. A 1951 graduate of Oklahoma State University and a geologist by profession, he is one of the most knowledgeable leaders in the international energy industry. In 1956, he founded the company that would become Mesa Petroleum. Over the course of 4 decades, he built Mesa into one of the largest and most well-known independent exploration and production companies in the United States. He is no stranger to riding out the boom and bust cycles that characterize the oil and gas business. He just told me that he's not as rich this year as he was last year. But Mr. Pickens, I would trade my financial net worth with yours anytime. After leaving Mesa Petroleum in 1996, our speaker founded BP Capital Management. He is a leading advocate for bold new directions for U.S. energy policy and energy security. There could be no better forum for such an important discussion of America's energy challenges than right here at Rice University, because Rice's groundbreaking research on nanotechnology and the Baker Institute's energy policy program are among the best in the country. Our speaker recently authored The First Billion is the Hardest, Reflections on a Life of Comebacks and America's Energy Future, which has appeared in the New York Times list of best-selling books. I am hoping Mr. Pickens will write a book on how easy it is to make that second billion. Following this afternoon's events, Mr. Pickens has agreed to sign copies of his book. If you would like to purchase a book, there'll be a limited number of copies available in the Baker Hall Commons across the plaza. He is a recipient of many honors, including the Horatio Alger Award, Texas Women's University 2008 Virginia Chandler Dykes Leadership Award, and he has been inducted into the Texas Business Hall of Fame. In 2006, he contributed $175 million to a wide range of causes and for the formation of the T. Boone Pickens Foundation, which supports many charitable efforts for education, medical research, at-risk youth, and conservation and wildlife programs, just to name a few. And last month, he was named as the 2009 Texan of the Year by the Texas Legislative Conference. In short, our speaker is a man of vast experience in the oil industry who has worked tirelessly to raise the level of public debate, and this is really critical, on the future of U.S. energy policy, one of the most critical challenges our nation faces. Like you, I am looking forward to what he will say this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. T. Boone Pickens.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I've been to Rice many times, and you always give me a full house, and I appreciate that. I'm going to put my watch over here. I know. Wait a minute, is there a clock someplace around? Oh, there. Okay, I'll watch the clock. But I was going to put this watch over, and I want to tell you a story about it. I made a speech in Denver. It's got to have been 15 years ago. And I put my watch up to, you know, I don't ever like to take too much of anybody's time. And so I watched the clock pretty close. And anyway, I put the watch up, and when I got through, I went over and sat down, and they told me, they said that we'd like for you to come back up, and the person that was talking, he was pretty funny, and he said, you know, you made a great speech, and he said you were better than most of our other speakers that we have, and this was a group of accountants, and he said you're better than most that have come, and he said we want to give you a nice gift for your coming to Denver to speak to us and all, and he gave me my own Rolex watch back. I'd left it up on the podium, see, and so he called me back up, and I said, well, I never did remember accountants being big on gifts, and so I said, you all are better than anybody I've ever seen. You give me my own watch, and so, but I'm going to give you the problem, and this is a huge problem for all of us here and all of us in America, and that's what it's about. It has nothing to do with politics, zero. And when I launched this campaign in July the 8th of '08, when I launched it, I said it cannot in any way have any taint of politics involved in it. And so I stayed out of the election of '08, but I did run a campaign that was kind of at the level of a presidential candidate. I spent $50 million on this and you say, gosh, why does this old geezer spend $50 million? God, I hope this is for me. I'll sit down. Why would he spend $50 million to tell us about an energy problem for America? But over the years, from '74, when I first started to focus on this, that Richard Nixon said he said in 1970, he said by the end of this decade, we will not be importing oil from any foreign country. And I thought, I wonder if that could be possible. At that point, we were importing 24%. At the end of that decade, we were importing 28%. So that was not correct. And from that point forward, I noticed that everybody that ran for president, either Democrat or Republican, would at some point during the campaign say, elect me and we'll be energy independent. If you think back in the recent campaigns, now I have been advisor on that subject twice. Once with Bob Dole, and he of course wanted me to be the Texas chairman, which meant raise money. And I said, okay, Bob, I'll do that, but I said that I get to be the energy advisor. He said, perfect. He said, you know more about energy. This is '96. And I was convinced in '96 what happened in 2008 would happen in 2002. So I told him, I said, if you win 2 terms, you're going to see the biggest energy problem that could possibly have ever come up in the history of energy. And he said, okay, I'm glad I've got you with me. And so we talked for about an hour on energy, and when he got through, he said, now I'm going to tell you something about politics. He said, you see that sleeping dog over there? No, but if you tell me, Senator, that's a sleeping dog there, just so we can move on with this discussion, I'll accept that the sleeping dog there is a sleeping dog. He said, politicians never awaken a sleeping dog. And he said, in this campaign of 1996, Bill Clinton will not mention energy, and I will not mention energy. And unless somebody trips over that dog, energy will not be mentioned. That's it. It was not mentioned. So, but he did say, the energy that both of them said, if you let me, we'll be energy independent, and that's all it was said. Nobody ever said, tell me, what is the plan? The next time I had an opportunity was a guy that you may not remember because he was only on the scene for a minute. It was Rudy Giuliani. And the energy discussion with him lasted 5 minutes. he is no more interested in what I had to say about energy, but he was interested in what I could do in fundraising. So I was his best fundraiser, and we had 5 minutes on energy, and I said, please do not get up and say, if we elect you, you'll be energy independent. He didn't for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, he started to say it. And I said, if nothing else, say that you will try your best to make us energy secure, but we cannot be energy independent. But he never left the idea that somehow, some way, that if he was elected, we would be energy independent. Okay, now, that is the first problem, is the leadership in Washington has never really understood energy. They didn't then, and they barely do now. But I will say we got a better chance, I think, with President-elect Obama than we would have had with McCain. And I'm an old Republican. But McCain, once I started my campaign, that it wasn't long before they invited me to come and talk to them. So McCain and I met. He had one advisor with him, and we met. And 3 days later, well, Obama and I met, and he had one advisor with him. So it was a serious meeting, and the meetings lasted for a little over an hour. McCain was very focused on nuclear and asked me at one point, he said, you're opposed to nuclear. I said, no, you need to understand, I'm for anything that's American. I'm opposed to foreign oil. But he never quite was convinced that nuclear wasn't the solution. It's only a part of the solution. In the Obama meeting, he was interesting because I knew McCain barely, but I didn't know Obama at all. And so he was suspicious of me because he was told I was a Republican, of course. But I'm not, well, I wasn't in this campaign though. I mean, I honestly stayed completely out of it. I had people that wanted to join me in what I was doing, and I said, no, I'm going to be the Lone Ranger. I'm going to put up my money, and I'm going to say what I think is what is the problem and what is the solution. Okay, so that I'll turn and look. I'm looking at the clock, and so anyway, with Obama, he had an interesting. At a certain point, after I'd been with him for 30 minutes, well, I said to him, I said, something you say makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And he said, what is it? And I said, well, you are very proud of the fact you're going to have 1 million plug-in hybrids in 10 years. And, you know, when somebody says something like that to you, sort of, you know, you've been challenged at that point. He straightened up. He said, now let me tell you, Mr. Pickens, I'm not kidding about that. I'm going to have 1 million plug-in hybrids. I said, well, if we look out that window at that parking lot and there were 1 million cars there, it looked like a hell of a bunch of cars. And he said, it sure would. And I said, but you need to understand the magnitude of the problem you're getting ready to face. There are 250 million vehicles in America, and we're turning them out at about 16 million a year. And you're going to have 1 million that are plug-in hybrids. There was a pause, and he looked at me and said, that's not very many, is it? I said, it sure is. You've got to think big numbers. And so he then got deep into the discussion, took a lot of notes and all. But today, 70% of all the oil we use in America goes to transportation fuel. And the production for the world today is 85 million barrels. I don't believe it'll be any more than that. I think that the world is pretty well peaked on production. And so if you accept that, the 85 million, now how much of the 85 are we using in America? We're using 21 million barrels a day. 21 million. So we're using 25% of all the oil produced every day in the world. And we're importing almost 70% of that oil that we use. Okay. So we're using 25% with 4% of the population, and we only have 3% of the reserves. I mean, we're really not even in the game as far as production is concerned. So if that is the case, the reserves are only 3% for America. Well, what exactly do we have? We have a country that has used oil like we have oil. And why has this happened? Well, I can be critical real quick because everybody's critical of Washington. We didn't have the leadership that pointed out to us that we were continuing to import more and more oil all the time. You remember back in 1970, we were importing 24%. Now we're at 70, almost 70. If we go 10 years forward, like we've gone the last 40 years, and that is with no plan, we will then be importing 75% of our oil, and the price will be $200 to $300 a barrel. If that is the case, and I believe, and I'll bet on this, that this is where we'll go if we don't have an energy plan. So if we are paying $200 to $300 a barrel, and there's no reason for me to believe that you won't be paying $200 to $300, or maybe even higher, that if you are, you don't have to worry about health care, education, or Social Security reform, because you're not going to have the money to address them. So it's a serious problem, and the problem really is your problem, not my problem. I can make it to the finish line, and my standard of living is probably not going to change very much. But you and the generations to come, you're going to have to figure this out. And the way you start is to figure out how to use our resources instead of being dependent on resources from people that are not even friendly to us. I'm convinced we're paying for both sides of the war by the purchase of the oil. And so here we are. We're at $100 a barrel. We're importing oil at the cost of about $700 billion a year. Let's go to the severe solution. That would be, if we could cut that completely off, that would mean $700 billion would stay home. It would mean that we would now be in a favorable balance of foreign, what am I trying to think of, foreign market? What? Balance of trade, yeah. The balance of trade would go favorable if that could be accomplished. I'm not so sure it can be, and I'm not so sure that I want it to be. I want to use the Canadian oil, and I want to use the Canadian natural gas. I want to use the Mexican oil, but it's not going to be around very long. Cantarell, their big field, is declining about 25% a year. In 5 years, they will not be an exporter, they'll be an importer. So Mexico is not much of a factor. Canada is a factor because of the Canadian oil sands. The Canadian oil sands up at Fort McMurray in northern Alberta contain about 250 billion barrels. I think more oil is in the Canadian oil sands than you have in Saudi Arabia. The Saudis say they have 260 billion barrels, but I don't believe they don't have that much. Okay, but they won't let us audit. They won't let us see well performance data or anything else. They just tell us those are the numbers, and people pick it up and say they said that was it, so it must be it, and we accept it. The oil is, I've said that the world has pretty well peaked. Okay, go back to the problem, and let's assume $100 oil, because I think you'll be back there. You'll be back there by the end of 2010. The fourth quarter of 2010, I think you'll be at $100 oil, if not sooner. So this $40 is not going to hang around very long. And but they've told you that they want $75 for the oil, which means 75 plus to me. And that's the way, when the economy of the world recovers, demand's going to go up, and supply is capped at 85 million. So you'll be back using 87 million barrels a day with 85 million supply. So that does push the price up, demand being greater than supply. And the only way you can control demand is by price. And so I think that's what we're faced with. Now I want you all to think with me throughout what I'm telling you, because this is your problem. And I want, when I leave here tonight, that I've offloaded this, or a part of it, on you. Okay? I'm serious. I am dead serious. I want it, part of this, to be offloaded. I mean, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be at Rice. And you know, this school was not Rice University at one time, it was Rice Institute. I think it was Rice Institute when I was at Texas A&M one year in 1947, wasn't it? Is that right? Yeah. Well, anyway, you're at Rice University now, and you're smart people because smart people go to Rice. And but here, I want you to think, but continually think positive but objective in what I'm saying. Don't go to the 10% I say that are in America. And I've got to tell you this story. In Roberts County, Texas, where my ranch is, and that's in the wind country. It's up in the northeast panhandle, northeast of Amarillo. And and there in that county, Roberts County, they had a guy that was born in the county and had lived in the county his entire life, and he was 90 years old. He's a pretty alert old guy, and they had a birthday party for him at the county seat. And that was at the high school gymnasium. And so we all went there and shook hands with him. I knew Mr. White, and this was 25 years ago. And so the person in front of me shaking hands with him said, Mr. White said, congratulations on being born in this county and having lived here 90 years. And he said, thank you, young man. I appreciate your congratulations. He said, Mr. White, I've got one question for you. He said, in that 90 years, you have seen a lot of changes, haven't you? And he said, I sure have, and I was against every goddamn one of them. Do not get in that category. We have to have changes, and they have to be for this country. We have the problem of the imports that are now, of the 70% that we import, 57 times 70 will get you the amount of oil that we are receiving from the Mideast and Africa, both very unstable areas. So we have gone. Now, if you think back on what President-elect Obama has said, he said it twice that I've heard it. Once at the Democrat convention when he received the nomination, he said, we will not be importing any oil from the Mideast in 10 years. In the debate, Bob Schieffer was a moderator, and it was the fourth debate. Obama said, in 10 years, we will not be importing any oil from the Mideast. The same thing as and he said it, I'm told, 2 other times. This guy's a smart guy, and he's not saying things like that, and I don't think he'll be irresponsible and say something that he doesn't have a plan to accomplish. Okay, if we assume now we aren't going to be importing anything in 10 years from the Mideast, and we need to throw Africa in there too, because they're equally unstable. But and you pointed out to me that we need to put Venezuela in there too. I've forgotten who said that in a meeting a few minutes ago. So, of course we have to put Venezuela in there. It's the most unstable of any place that I know anywhere. But so those places we have to be able to, if we want to use the oil, we have to be in a position to be able to have backup somewhere other than the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That's only 750 million barrels. We can use that up pretty fast if we were cut off from Mideast and Africa and Venezuelan oil. Okay, now, how do we solve it, and how do we follow up on what President-elect Obama has said, that we won't be importing any oil from the Mideast in 10 years? And that, the only resource that we have that can accomplish that for America is natural gas. It's the only one. In my meeting with McCain and Obama, they both were somewhat surprised when they said, both of them said, we would like to get to the battery as quickly as we can. And I said, remember, the battery won't move an 18-wheeler. The look was very similar. It won't? No, it won't move an 18-wheeler. The only two fuels you're going to move that 18-wheeler with is going to be with diesel or with natural gas. Ethanol won't do it, so don't think we can use that. We have one fuel. It was interesting with Senator McCain when I said, you only have one fuel in America that will back foreign oil out, and the best place to accomplish that is on heavy-duty equipment. And he said, you're getting ready to make me pick a winner, aren't you? I said, no, it's already picked. We only have one. It's not a choice. We only have one choice, and that's natural gas. He never was convinced I wasn't trying to get him to pick a winner, but that is the only fuel we have that will do it. Well, it's the most unbelievable opportunity, and when you get older you get, the more when things happen, you start to think of divine intervention. And this almost has to be divine intervention. At this history in this country, that we have basins of carboniferous shales, knowing that all geologists know that the source rock is a carboniferous shale. And we knew he had gas in it, but we never believed water. I got it. We never believed that we could extract the natural gas out of those shales. But we can. There's no question, it can be done. The largest gas field 10 years ago that we had in the United States still producing or shut in was the Arctic Coastal Plain, 39 trillion. Now, Barnett Shale covers 5.5 counties in northern Texas, in North Texas, and the Barnett has 50 trillion. Now we've uncovered a shale that's even more productive, is Haynesville over North Louisiana and East Texas, and that is 5 or 6 times as big as Barnett. Then you have the Marcellus shale in Appalachia, and it is probably 3 or 4 times as big as the Barnett. You have the Woodford in Oklahoma, the Fayetteville in Arkansas, and you have the Barnett in West Texas, and then you have a huge one up in Canada in the Horn River in British Columbia. Okay, what am I saying? I'm saying we have plenty of natural gas to solve this problem. Plenty. It's cheaper. 1 MCF of natural gas is the equivalent of 8 gallons of gasoline. Okay, what's 8 gallons worth? $15. What's 1 MCF of natural gas worth? 6. You have a favorable comparison, natural gas to gasoline. How could we be so lucky is to have an abundance of something that's 60% cleaner than diesel? It's ours, it's cheaper, it's available to us, and it can be accomplished. The first place you go, anything I give you will have a model. I can give you an active operating model. I'm not an R&D guy. At 80, it takes too long. Everything takes too long. You got to have something already that works. So the model for my proposal for heavy-duty equipment to go to natural gas is Southern California. Southern California actually was attacking a air quality problem. You remember they had horrible smog in Los Angeles. They've solved that. What did they solve it with? They solved it with natural gas. So we have the California model to look at, and at the same time they were helping on importing oil because they were using natural gas instead of gasoline and diesel. Okay, the guy that was that did the model for him out there is a guy named Barry Wallerstein. Dr. Wallerstein runs the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and he has funds available to him. He has taxing authority in that AQMD, and so he said, find me the biggest polluters here, and those are the ones that we need to get out of service. Makes sense, doesn't it? So they looked at it, and it was easy to find. It was the trash trucks. The trash trucks are working 24 hours a day. They're idling, they're inefficient, and they have horrible emissions. One diesel trash truck taken out of service would be the equivalent of taking 325 cars off the highway. That's big. That is big. He knew it, so he had money. So he said, okay, that everybody in the trash business, when you buy a new trash truck, it has to be natural gas. And I'll give you $50,000 because it has an incremental cost greater than the diesel. The equipment does because it hasn't been manufactured to scale to be able to reduce the cost that much. So now 50% of the trash trucks in Southern California are on natural gas. I proposed to the transition team with Obama, and I've had some input into this thing, that I've proposed to them that, look, first, let's go with that the federal government, on all future vehicles, that we will use domestic fuel only on the federal vehicles. That's a leadership point, and it'll feed into the big three in Detroit if they're still alive, but it'll feed into them that this administration is serious about what they're doing. It's not only they're going to do wind and solar, no question about that, and that's good, and it's going to all take place in the right place, which is in the central part of the country, and then transmit it to the east and west coast. It's the safest place to have it. But back to the second point, if they would mandate that we do 350,000 18-wheelers, and they're 6.5 million, the technology is very, very well known. The largest bus fleet in the world that's on natural gas is Beijing. Second largest is LAMTA, 2,800. They've been on it for 20 years. And so the technology is well known. There are 8.5 million vehicles in the world today on natural gas, but only 142,000 of them in the United States. And you think, wait a minute, does he know what he's talking about? I know what I'm talking about. I sure know what I'm talking about. And I can give you the answer why we only have 142,000. It's because we had cheap oil. We had cheap oil, and it was abundant to us. Why do anything different? What could you do better than have cheap oil? Well, we didn't address the security problem, and the leadership in Washington did not. I don't think they fully understood how serious it all was. Okay, here we are, and we've got a president now, and he's getting ready to come with a stimulus package, and I'm going to be working very hard. Now, what I want you to do, and I'm not finished with what I want him to say, but what I want you to do is to come in on PickensPlan.com, hit community, and sign up with me. Now, I've had over 16 million come in on that website, and I've had 1,430,000 that have signed up with me to help me. And what's your help? That I'm gonna stay in communication with you, and when I want you to help me, and you believe what we're doing is right, then you will put the pressure on the politicians to that, look, we've got to have an energy plan. You've got to have an energy plan. Okay, back to where we now have a president, and he's getting ready to tell us that he understands. The part that really I am so counting on, he said that we will not be importing oil from the Mideast in 10 years. He has got to tell us that he has a plan, and it's got to use natural gas. So we do 350,000 heavy-duty 18-wheelers. And let me tell you kind of how that unfolds. Swift Trucking is a pretty good model here. Swift Trucking has 20,000 18-wheelers, and they're receiving daily, 365 days a year, 23 Kenworths a day. That's 7,000 a year. So that fleet is rolling out in 3 years. I don't think everybody's as aggressive maybe as Swift is, but I think 3 to 5, when I talk to Walmart people, they say it's 5 years for them. And if you can bring that into play, and you can do 350,000 vehicles, what would it do for us? The first thing is, it would cost us $30 billion, $90,000 a vehicle to buy the new. You do the same thing that South Coast Air Quality Management District did, just incent those new purchases. You don't have to kick anything out of the fleet, just let it happen. With that, you will create jobs for over 300,000 people. You will build 1,200 stations, which the government will not pay for. Let private industry do that. But you are committed to do $30 billion worth of incentives on those vehicles, on those first vehicles. Now, halfway through it, you're going to know whether you've got a deal or not. You're going to see whether this works. But let's assume that it does work, and we go out to 350,000 vehicles. You will have reduced your dependency of foreign oil by 5.14%. Now that's something, I mean, that's gallon for gallon. When you use a gallon of natural gas, you're going to reduce a gallon of foreign oil. And so here you've got a plan, and I've got to tell you the story. That when I was, it was in February of my sophomore year at Oklahoma State, and I had transferred from Texas A&M to Oklahoma State. And my dad and I were both in the same fraternity, and I was being initiated into the fraternity, and so he came and pinned me with his pen that he was, when he was initiated in 1922. This is now 1948. And, you know, it was a sweet ceremony. You know, here your dad was, and he pinned a pen on it. You know, and everybody had tears in their eyes and thought this is really nice. But we got out on the front lawn, and he's getting ready to go back home. And then it got serious. And he said, son, let me tell you, he said, you've been in school a year and a half now. And he said, your mother and I, well, that's the key, your mother and I. That means this is serious. So listen to what I'm going to tell you. He said that you started out in vet medicine and decided that wasn't for you. I couldn't get through chemistry, that's why it wasn't for me. But second, I'm now in business, and he said, you're not working very hard at this either. And he said, let me tell you something, son. A fool with a plan can beat a genius with no plan. And he said, I'm afraid I've got a son at this point that's a fool with no plan. But to sober you up, son, your mother and I used it second time, so that means he's got her on board. And so he said the second time that he said, we are counting on you getting out of school in June of 1951. And we want you to know very clearly that's our schedule, and you will adjust to our schedule. We won't adjust to yours. I got it. I got it. I got 2 18s and a 19 hours semesters. I got out of there, though. I made it out in June of 51, because I knew that was it. I mean, I'd heard it, and it wasn't going to be okay. Now, we do not have a plan. We have not had a plan. And a fool with a plan can beat a genius with no plan. I'm convinced that's true. You have got to help get a plan for this country. An energy plan for this country is what we have to have. But to date, we have no plan. We have no plan. And so we'll see. We're going to know pretty quick on this stimulus package what's going to come out of President-elect Obama's mouth on energy. Maybe he doesn't cover all of it at this point, but then you've got to get it in the first 100 days. And we reopened. How many of you all saw the ads that I ran? For sure, not all of you are watching television. But we started new ads this week in Washington, because that's where the battle is going to be now. And we have got to get this in the first 100 days if we don't get it in the stimulus package. So we're going to get 2 cracks at it. But anyway, I've taken it up to that point. I've talked a long time. And so, on my book, that all proceeds from that book go to Brooke Army Medical in San Antonio and to Fisher House. And Fisher House is the homes that are at VA hospitals for families visiting their loved ones that are in the hospital. So I don't get it. I don't think it. So anyway, I wanted you to know that. They and let's go to questions. I know we have questions. Okay. How about right there? How about right there? Where is somebody? Okay, how much will the plan cost? You're talking about cost us taxpayers? Oh, the Pickens Plan. Okay, yeah, I have spent on that to date right at $50 million. Now going forward, I'm about to run out of money, so I'm not going to spend 50 again. But to get me through the first 100 days, it'll cost us another $20 million.
So I I have a question for you, Mr. Pickens. Could you explain to the audience, we were talking to you before about why it's important that Washington focus on storage technology for renewable energy and how that fits in?
Tell me what the last part was. She said.
Batteries and
Okay,
storage.
storage? Did you say storage?
Yeah, storage, batteries and storage. Could you explain why that's going to be important?
We don't, the technology, I don't think we have it yet to be able to store, for instance, electricity. But there are so many working on that question right now. And let's go back over the 40 years. I said that we had used cheap oil. We have not been tasked in this country to solve our problem because there has been nothing that has caused us to awaken. But last summer, we saw oil go to $100 a barrel. And the day I opened up with my campaign, gasoline was $4.11. Today it's $1.40. I have people say, well, we don't have to worry. It's only $1.40. Yeah, okay, just wait. It'll be back up again. But you don't want to wait. You want to act is what you need to do. And so when we've been tasked, we will solve how to store the electricity. It will happen. The people, I mean, don't think that you're the only room full of smart people. But there are a lot of rooms full of smart people in America. You know that, I do too. And you're going to have us, once the president, and I think this guy is a leader. I think he can stand up there and say, we're not at war, but this is very similar to war, is what we're engaged in. It has nothing to do with politics, parties, or anything else. This all has to do with us. It's non-political. And we are going to solve the problem, and this is the way we're going to go at it. And one thing he needs to do is to say that on the 10th of the month, every month, I will come back on and tell you how we're doing. I will also give you instructions as to what we're going to have to do to solve the problem. But I'm going to show you the 10th of the month how much oil we are now importing. And at some point in the not too distant future, we will start to take that down by our own efforts. And I think that people would make his remarks, and it wouldn't be, you wouldn't have to listen to a 30-minute speech. 10 minutes, that's all it'd take. But he can tell us how we're doing and how we're going to solve the problem. Okay, another question.
Yeah, Mr. Pickens, that you mentioned that every president, the last 10 one, have been telling about independence, and Mr. Obama has also made the same one. What can we do, along with you, to make sure that he's going to keep the promise?
What can you do with me?
And you?
Join with me. We're a lot better operating as a large group. I can promise you that I was in Fargo, North Dakota, and we see this as a town hall meeting tonight, and this is the 20th town hall meeting I've made. I've made them all over the country. But this was in Fargo, North Dakota, and the guy gets up in the back of the room and he said, look, you can get a lot more done than I can, is what he said. He said, you're a rich guy, and you know the ropes in Washington, and you can go up there. What can I do? I said, let me tell you something. I said, for 30 years I've gone to Washington. I wasn't as rich 30 years ago as I was that day. I'm not as rich today as I was that day in Fargo. But I said, I have gone up there over 30 years. What did I find? I found everybody to be polite, and all said they would help me. And I said, at first I had to wait 30 minutes to see a congressman or senator. As I got richer, they waited to see me. And so if I was 10 minutes late, they were there. But all of them said the same thing. You've got a good idea, and I'll help you. What happened, though? Nothing. I got nothing out of the deal. They were always nice and all. But today, and I told this guy in Fargo, I said, let me tell you something, pal. I'm a hell of a lot more powerful with 1,500,000 people signed up with me than I was a rich guy going from Texas to Washington. And that's where we are. Together we can make something happen.
Okay, second question was that I thought that you will be talking about your favorite subject of windmills, but today you are talking on natural gas. from your 30 years of experience, you have seen our oil industry, when the prices goes up, we talk about alternative energy sources. When the crude oil prices come down, we forget about all these things.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so could you have suggested that in order to make sure that the prices really don't fall, some kind of a mechanism where the government has to come? And that's what Kissinger was also suggesting when the crude oil prices, soon after the first oil shock. So can we think of, so that oil industry and other people who are discussing these alternate energy sources don't have to go through these ups and downs?
Okay, you've had ups and downs every decade. You had it in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and 2008 summer, you really got it. That's where they showed you where it could go, and it could even go higher. We ran into some things that changed things temporarily. But if everybody understands the problem, that the way we'll look at this, that energy's cheap right now compared to what it was 6 months ago, okay? Take advantage of it. Move quickly and get on your own resources, because you know it's going to be a temporary deal. And I will do everything I can to keep people informed. I will go to the finish line with you on this subject to accomplish what we have to do for America. And at the same time, if this thing sets up right, I think this president is going to explain we have to do what he said he was going to do. We will be off of Mideast oil in 10 years. Okay, if he says that, follows it up and tells us this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and everybody knows, and he keeps telling us, and don't worry about how cheap the price of gasoline gets, just get on the plan and get it solved. Okay, let me take one over here. Where? Oh, okay, up there.
Boone, this is Welcome Wilson Sr.
Hi, welcome.
I'm chairman of the Board of Regents at the University of Houston.
I know, you and I saw the football game together when
Exactly.
you beat Oklahoma State.
You beat the socks off of us.
I knew he was going to say it, so I say it first. Okay, welcome.
My question to you is, what can universities do specifically to weigh in on this and help the Pickens Plan?
What you can do is get acquainted with the problem. Don't accept everything that I have told you. Dig in, look at it, and see. You'll gain confidence in me. Don't just throw in with me, but get on the website with me, and we will keep you informed. At the same time, you are looking into it yourself, and you are going to come up with some ideas too. We are going to create a great grassroots interest in the biggest problem that's facing America, that's ever faced America, other than a war. But you're going to get acquainted with it. When you leave here, I will have made an impression on you. I promise you I will. You'll leave and you say, I don't know whether that old so-and-so knew what he's talking about or not, but he's made me think, and I'm going to go look at some of this stuff, and I'm going to find out about it. And you're going to find out what I'm telling you is exactly correct, and we're going to have to work on it together. But you've got to do it here. You've got to do it at all the universities. Everybody's going to get involved in it, and everybody is going to want to come up with some help to solve the problem. Okay, give me another question.
First off,
Thank you so much for doing what you're doing for my generation and for my children's generation. I think this is important, and without this kind of leadership, I don't see it going anywhere. Second of all, this is maybe a silly question, is jet fuel impacted by foreign oil? I mean, is it used in?
Yes, it is. Sure, you got jet fuel coming that's made from foreign oil.
So would you be able to substitute natural gas in jet fuel to make a difference?
No, you will not. But remember, we do have some oil. We're producing 5 million barrels of oil a day in the United States. And so we do have oil. And we'll find more oil. And if you wonder whether I'm for opening up OCS and drilling, of course. I'm for anything in America. I'm even for ethanol. And that's kind of hard, but but you know, it's ours, and it does create jobs, and profits are made, and taxes are paid, and the economy moves forward. Did that get your question?
Yeah, I just was wondering if we'd be able to substitute anything within, I mean, if the airlines needed to look at a change as well.
No, natural gas won't be used for air for jet fuel. Yes, where am I going now? Down
Mr.
here, up there.
Pickens. Down here.
Okay.
You had, I think, touched upon this with your answer to the previous question, but I know this past summer you said that you were for drilling in Alaska, and you're saying now you're for anything in America. Do you think that there's any way to get around not drilling in Alaska? Has anything changed since?
Well, right now, excuse me for interrupting.
Sure, not a problem.
Okay, but right now, I don't think that the Democrats are going to want to drill in Alaska. So. But I'm for drilling in Alaska. But remember this, and I said this one time, and you remember Ted Stevens, he just has been, he lost in Alaska, senator. And, well, you know, the guy's been around forever. He's older than I am, he's 86, and he's a friend of mine. But Ted told me, he said, quit getting up in front of audiences and say, why do we have to drill in Alaska? And I said, that's right, that's what I say. Why do we have to drill in Alaska? Remember, the pipeline, this is a good point, the pipeline up there only carried 2 million barrels. And people have the idea that there's oil in Alaska that could solve all our problems. But the pipeline's only 2 million barrels, and we're using 21 million a day. The pipeline has 700,000 barrels in it today. It was 2 million barrels 10 years ago, and it's declined at Prudhoe Bay. And so all you can put in is 2 million barrels. It's not going to solve our problem. And he said, well, quit saying that. He said, the people in Alaska want that oil developed up there and everything else. And I said, well, I want to tell you what else I said. He said, I've heard everything you said, and I don't like any of it. He said, you say that the oil has been there for over 100 million years, and it's not going to go anywhere. So in the event we don't develop it in this generation, let the next generation have it. It's the last known area that could have big reserves in America that we know. And I said, let somebody else have it. We've used up so much oil in this country that this generation doesn't deserve to do it. He said, I know, don't say that anymore. He said, I don't like you to say it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Up there.
I don't remember which Senate subcommittee it was I saw you speak before when you presented your plan, but you mentioned that in setting up your wind farm, that you had difficulty acquiring American-made generators and whatnot, and you saw that Vestas was making generators, and you finally got GE to make some here in America. Is there a similar problem when trying to get natural gas technology manufactured? Do other countries have the lead on us in terms of getting manufacturing jobs out of that sector? Well,
now, on the wind, on the generators, I didn't say that we didn't have generators here. GE is very advanced on the generators, on the turbines, and then we have foreign Mitsubishi's in here, Vesta, and others. Those are foreign, I know that. But on the natural gas, this is an interesting one, that we have one passenger car in the United States that is made for natural gas. Now, you can upfit them if you want to do it. And for instance, Governor Huntsman in Utah, he's upfitted all of his vehicles to natural gas. And there is an upfitting operation in Dallas that's pretty advanced. But there's only one original equipment manufacturer in the United States, which is the Honda. Is it Honda or Toyota? Honda, yeah. Honda GX Civic, which I drive. That's the only one. But get this. General Motors makes 17 natural gas passenger cars, but none in the United States. That's a little scary. They do it in South America and Europe. If you went in and shopped in Europe today for a passenger car and you want to go natural gas, you could see 23 different vehicles for natural gas. So we are behind there. But all of that, you can pick that up very, very fast. Very fast. Okay. Wait a minute, over there.
Arthur Monroe, Texas Southern University. What are some of the things you're looking for Barack Obama to put into the stimulus plan? You spoke about it. You mentioned that there are some things that you want.
Okay, what am I looking at for the stimulus plan? I think there's a good chance that we're going to get some direction, and I'm going to take you back every time to that one statement that he says, and he says it very comfortably, that we're not going to be importing oil from the Mideast in 10 years. So he's got to have something coming up fast. It could be that it's not in detail in the stimulus plan, but it could be in the first 100 days of the administration. So, okay, last question.
Based on current consumption, if you were to totally shut off all oil and switch to natural gas, how much time does that buy us based on our current reserves?
Help me.
Based on our current reserves and our current...
Oh, current reserves. You mean for natural gas or current reserves for oil?
Current natural gas reserves.
Natural gas reserves?
Yes.
We've got 20 to 30 years is what we have. That's the bridge that natural gas is going to give us.
And that's if all oil consumption switches to natural gas tomorrow?
Not all. It won't be all. But I'm saying to do what Obama wants to do is cut out foreign Mideast oil. If we went that route, we would have an easy 30 years to make it to the next generation of transportation fuel. And if we got there sooner, Al Gore and I talked about this subject, and Al says, you know, global warming, and I said, Al, page 2 for me. Global warming is page 2. Page 1 is the cost of the oil. I want to get the imbalance payments in better balance, 1. And I said, I want to get off on the security issue that we are so dependent on foreign oil from the enemy. And those are the things first. And I said, if I get those out of the way out, and I still have plenty of energy, I will work on global warming with you. But Al, though, says he can go with me on the bridge to the future. But he said, what happens if now we got the bridge of natural gas and we're working on the next generation and we have a breakthrough on the battery, what happens? I said, if you do, natural gas goes a lot of places. I mean, it's a superior hydrocarbon, the best of all the hydrocarbons. And I said, it can go someplace else. If you come up with a battery, that'll move the 18-wheeler. So, but all these things can happen. But keep thinking positive on the subject that we can solve the problem. Don't get into that deal that we don't want to, you know, I have people tell me, say, well, gosh, it's going to take a long time. Well, for 40 years, we've had no energy plan. And you can solve this in less than 10 years. And 10 years goes by really fast. You all know that. The older you get, the faster it goes. So, but okay, that's the last one.